Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that nobody else in the world matters except for them. And in today's episode, a Karen harasses a postal worker, and she learns a friggin' lesson she'll never ever forget. At least I hope. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the other stories as well, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for future tales. We're diving in. So I'm a 911 operator. On this day, a Karen calls saying that she's in the parking lot of a Walmart and that she was almost run over by a car. I asked if she was injured, and she says no. I then asked her to explain the situation, and she gives me the following. She says, well, I was walking to my car and these people came driving through the parking lot and they slammed on their brakes. And I said, what are you doing? Can't you control your vehicle? And that's when they stopped, got out, and yelled back at me to watch where I was going. And then they went inside the Walmart. Their license plate is this, this, and this, and they're driving this model car. And it's parked in the Walmart parking lot. Send police. I then say to her, okay, so what are you wanting police to do, ma'am? The woman then scoffs and says, well, I mean, they were just being so ugly to me. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I tell her, you want police to come out because you had a verbal argument with another person? To which she responds, we had an argument because they almost hit me. Sir, you don't understand. They were being really ugly and mean to me, and well, this just isn't talked about enough in this country. Something needs to be done. Can't you file a report or something? I ask her, file a report that you had an argument? She then goes on and says, okay, you're not hearing the first part of what I'm saying. They almost hit me with their car. Ma'am, I did hear you. You said you weren't injured, so there was almost an accident. But it didn't happen. It doesn't sound like it was intentional. She then argues that they were driving and clearly don't have control of the vehicle. And I say to her, ma'am, they were driving in a parking lot. That's not illegal. She then says to me, so you're just gonna do nothing, huh? I gave you their license plate. Like, we can't allow these kinds of things to continue. Things like what? And she says, people being ugly. And that's when I tell her, it's not illegal to be rude, ma'am. She then started going on a tirade about how society was somehow crumbling and that I was part of the problem because I don't seem to care, and then she starts asking where her tax money was going, so I stopped listening. I then wished her a good day and hung up the phone while she was still ranting, and she didn't call back. Guys, I can't imagine all the ridiculous calls that 911 operators must get on a daily basis. I also love how she yells at them first, but as soon as someone gets out and yells at her, no, that's illegal. I gotta call 911 to get you in trouble. Like some people, right? Okay, so this story happened on a Saturday, the day before Halloween. We all knew it was gonna be a long shift and we'd probably get a couple of crazies, but boy, oh boy, we didn't expect this level of crazy. So to set the scene, our Italian restaurant is fairly small. A very small section in the front and a slightly larger section in the back where the bar and kitchen are. Now this couple, a male and female, walk into the restaurant. They didn't book, but that was okay. We had enough space for a few walk-ins. So I greet them and sit them down at a table in the front, and then asked if they had allergies or intolerances, and they said they did not. I got their drink orders, but nothing else, as they were still deciding on what to eat. At this point, everything was pretty normal. So while the drinks were being made, literally like 5 seconds after the order was put through, I go to another table to make sure everything's alright with them. And this woman is snapping her fingers and shouting me over saying, excuse me, could you come back here please? The whole time she's snapping her fingers repeatedly, as if to say, hurry up. So I finish with the customer and go over to the couple and say, yes, are you ready to order? She goes and rattles off her order, and so does her partner. I put their order through, and luckily nothing bad happened while they waited for the meals. So at this point, the food is ready. So I bring over the starters, and as soon as the plates touch the table, she starts demanding that I get various things for the meal, which I was just about to offer. Now, that was fine, it's just the way they said it, and I was starting to stress out a little since I was running food, drinks, and making sure the other tables were happy. Now, we still don't know how it happened, but amidst all the chaos, this couple's main comes out while they're still halfway through their starters. The Karen calls me over, snapping her fingers and says, I'm not impressed with this service. To which I say, I'm so sorry about the mix-up. If you like, I can take the mains back and get them redone for you so you don't have to rush and it doesn't get cold. At this, she just gruffly says, no, and waves me away. I take a glance at her partner and he's happily enjoying his meal already. After a couple of minutes, I hear more finger snapping and I get called back again. She says, "This pasta you've cooked is so dry." Once again, I say, "I'm really sorry about that. If you like, I can have the kitchen redo it, or I can get them to put more sauce on it so it's not so dry." I then put my hand out in a gesture to take the bowl away, but she literally cradles the damn bowl and says, "No, bring me some garlic butter." So I do. A few minutes later, I'm with another table near the couple, and she shouts for me, snapping her fingers yet again. And all seems to be an absolute rage. She's screaming, "Look what I found in my food." Now, since I'm with another table, I just quickly say, "One moment please," and ask the table that I'm with if it's okay if I go see them, and I'll be right back. They agree. So I walk to Karen and she says, "Look at this. This is a nut. I'm allergic to nuts." Now, as soon as she said that, I am a little taken aback and say, "Oh, right, well, it doesn't look like a nut. It looks like a pip of a lemon, but I'll go check if the dish has nuts in it." Now, I know for a fact that the dish doesn't have nuts in it, and there's a squeezed lemon on her plate, so it's definitely a seed. But before I leave her, she starts gulping down water, hyperventilating, and literally pretending to go into anaphylactic shock, holding her throat and screaming, "You've ruined my night. You have ruined my food. This food is all bland and tasteless, and it's got nuts in it, and I'm allergic to nuts. I'd better be compensated." She then proceeds to shove her plate at me. So I take her food away, go to my manager, and explain what's been happening. We take her main meal off the bill because we'd rather just have her leave right now and not cause any more arguments. But just so we can cover ourselves, the manager does go over to her. He explains that her meal was taken off, but since I asked her if she had any allergies before they sat down, it's out of our hands, especially because we asked, and it seems like she withheld that information. The woman then starts screaming, "But I didn't know I was allergic to nuts until I had one today." The manager wasn't having it, so he just calmly and point blank said to her face, "Ma'am, it was a lemon seed." The woman ignored him and she kept screaming, "You've ruined my wedding night. You've ruined my anniversary. I am so disappointed and I'm never coming back here." Then they both walk out of the restaurant. But a few minutes later, the husband comes in and he embarrassingly asked if he left his cardigan here. He didn't. But then he says, "I'm so sorry about tonight. You have been wonderful. Sometimes my wife's just a little bit." He then gestures the crazy symbol to his head. And just before he completely walks out the door to his angry, impatient wife, he smiles and says, "Thanks for trying to make this evening pleasant. You've been great." Now, the best part is, all the tables who saw what happened start laughing, and they asked us to get their meals comped or discounted because they too have allergies. They're allergic to dickheads. Yeah, I think I would have totally called her bluff and dialed 911 at that point, guys. Like, if she wants to play those games where she snaps her fingers at servers and acts all high and mighty, then she definitely deserves to pay some sort of a-hole tax by having to pay for an ambulance ride that night. Also, could you imagine if someone mistook her little fake anaphylactic shock as a real thing and just ran up and jabbed her with a frickin' EpiPen? So this story happened 5 years ago. So I'm a mailman and my route consists of a single stop with 65 community boxes for a large gated community of 800 houses. Now each community box has 8 to 16 mailboxes in it, 1 to 2 lockers for parcels, and 1 outgoing mail slot. Each box has a master lock that opens the entire front of the box, so I can access all the mailboxes inside of it without having to open all of them individually. The boxes are set up in 4 rows, and it takes me about an hour to deliver each row. I am also paid by salary, not hourly, so the faster I get done, the more per hour I get paid, which is a great incentive to find ways to cut time out of my day. One way I do this is I'll split the mail into 4 sections, 1 for each row of boxes, instead of bundling mail for each box individually. I then open all the boxes on that row, go through all the flats, which are magazines, legal envelopes and such, and then go through with the letters, and then with the packages, then lock everything up and move on to the next row. I've been doing this route for 20 years now, and most of the people there know me by sight. I'm friendly with a few, and whenever someone I don't know approaches while working, I let them know my rules. These are my rules. You do not reach into any mailbox that I currently have open. If you need your mail now and you can't come back later, tell me which of the boxes your mailbox is in. I will close it for you so you can unlock your individual mailbox and get your mail from it. I will also not deliver out of order. no matter how big a hurry you happen to be in, because the mail comes in a specific order, and it's a pretty large waste of my time to dig through and find yours. I also do not permit children to be near any box that's open, because you never know what a kid's gonna grab, and grab they do. I know from experience. So along comes Little Miss Entitled Karen. Now, this being a rather wealthy, gated community, you'd think I'd run into them more often, but the people here are usually really polite and respectful of my rules. So you know the type: bleach blonde bob cut, pantsuit, and shoes that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. She walks right up to me as I'm just starting to unload everything from my mail truck, and she demands to know which mailbox is hers. She doesn't tell me her name, doesn't tell me her address, she just walks up and demands to know which mailbox is hers. Now you might be wondering how she could possibly not know. When there's 800 mailboxes and 65 community boxes, it can be a little daunting to figure out which box is yours when you first move in. So in this situation, there's a few questions I ask to figure out the best way to help someone. So I start with, have you received a set of mail keys yet? To which she replied, I don't see how that's any of your business. Now, meanwhile, her son, who's probably 8 to 10 years old, is starting to pick through the mail that I've already unloaded. Now, I have kids. I know how to talk to kids. So I tell him he needs to stop playing with the mail. Not loud, not mean, but firm. And Karen absolutely explodes over this. She starts screaming how I had no right to order her son around like that. When she finally yelled herself out, I told her what the boy was doing was called tampering with the mail. That's a felony, and as his legal guardian, she would be held responsible if he didn't stop. So she made a token, "Get away from there," comment to her kid, and he moved off to play on the grass nearby. So I get her info and showed her which box was hers. Her box was in the last row, so I wouldn't be getting to it until the very end. She then opened it and found all the mail that came for her before she got her key. She flipped through it to make sure it was all hers. As she was doing that, her son starts poking around the mail again. Since it's his second warning, I was a lot sharper when I told him to get away this time, and he starts crying. Now, as soon as he starts crying, Karen screams, "Don't yell at my son," and reached out to slap me. I told her if she did that again, that I'm gonna have to call the police and I would be pressing assault charges, and that she and her boy needs to get away from the mail. She then told me if I called police, she would tell them that I tried to assault her. At this point, she just stands there, and I was like, what? And she says, what about today's mail? I told her of my rules and that I wouldn't be getting to her box for a few hours. And she looked like she was gonna lose it again, but she just walks off in a frustrated huff. She doesn't go far though. She just walks over a ways away from the mailbox and stood there like she was gonna wait for me to get to her mailbox just out of sheer spite or something. So I went back to unloading. I opened up all the boxes on the first row and started delivery. Her kid comes over for a closer look, and that's fine, as long as he stays back and keeps his hands to himself. Kids are curious, and often surprised by how the community boxes open up and want a closer look. I tell him that he could watch, but he needs to stay back. Thankfully, Karen didn't hear this, or I imagine she'd be screaming at me again. I finished up the first row, and I looked over, and Karen was still there waiting. She was glaring at me and telling me to work faster. So before I get started on the second row, I make a quick call to my supervisor at the post office and let her know everything that's happened so far. She tells me that if Karen should approach me again, I was to start filming her with my phone, so there would be video evidence if things escalated. Now, this is what sealed Karen's fate in the end, and saved me from wrongful accusations, so I'm glad she told me to do it. So I get back to work, open all the boxes on the second row, and start delivering. The kid was back watching me, but this time, he moved right up to me and reached into one of the mailboxes as I put a magazine into it, like he was gonna grab the magazine. At which point, I grabbed him by the wrist, pulled his hand out, and told him in a very low, serious voice that if he did that again, that things were gonna get nasty. At this point, I tell the woman to please take her son away so I can do my job. So what does the kid do? He reaches into the box, pulls out the magazine, and he tears it in half. At this very point, I'm at the absolute end of my patience with these people, so I lose it. I start yelling at the kid, I start yelling at Karen, Karen starts yelling at me, I then pull out my phone and start filming her, and that's when she loses it. The woman goes on a rampage. She starts flipping all my trays of mail over, throwing it all over the place, throwing packages around, and she even reaches into open mailboxes, grabbing the mail to toss on the ground to undo my work. I got it all on film as I was trying to stop her. This whole time, she keeps screaming, "Don't you put your hands on me!" And then she pulls out her phone and calls police. She tells them that the mailman tried to force himself on her, and she needs officers there immediately, as I'm filming everything. So at this point, I stopped filming and called my supervisor. My supervisor then calls police and the postal inspectors, who have the same authority as US Marshals. My supervisor shows up first. I explain everything that happened again, and showed her the video. She starts ripping into Karen, while Karen keeps trying to say that I tried to assault her sexually. My supervisor then grabs my phone and shoves it right up into her face and screamed, "Yeah, I can see that actually happened from the video evidence that shows nothing of the sort." The police showed up next and looked kind of at a loss for what they were supposed to do. The mail looked like a bomb went off. There's my supervisor screaming at Karen and not even letting her get a word in. And then there's Karen's kid. He's happily opening up as many packages and ripping letters in half as he can get his hands on. And then the postal inspectors show up. Now, the postal inspectors have no sense of humor. They also don't take any BS from anyone. They looked at the mess, looked at the video I recorded, and they took my statement. They then arrested Karen for tampering with the mail and for allowing a minor in her care to open mail that's not addressed to her. My supervisor had to send 4 other carriers over to help clean up the mess, and we were there well after dark, getting it sorted out and put into the boxes. So in the end, Karen went to trial. I was brought in to give my version of events. In the end, Karen was sentenced to the maximum of 3 years in prison, and she had to pay a $250,000 fine. And I got a week off work to deal with my own anxiety over the whole thing. People, I don't care how pissed off you are or what you think you're doing. Do not mess with the mail. You will go to prison for it. Guys, what a freaking crazy fallout to that story. And seriously, I thought tree law was satisfying. And honestly, I didn't even know how serious tampering and destroying other people's mail was until I started reading stories like this. So for all of you who don't know how serious tampering with mail is, here's a bit of info. So because the United States Postal Service is a federal agency, mailboxes are considered federal property, and mail theft is charged as a federal offense. If you are charged with mail theft, you could face up to 5 years in federal prison and fines of up to $250,000. It's also a crime to injure, deface, or destroy any mail that's deposited into a mailbox. For each act of vandalism, you could be imprisoned for up to 3 years and fined up to $250,000. And depending on the manner in which the mail theft is committed, you could face other criminal charges, such as assault and breaking and entering. If personal identifying information such as names, date of birth, addresses, telephone numbers, tax ID numbers, social security numbers, and driver's license numbers was stolen, you could also face identity theft charges. So there you have it, folks. If you're gonna rage at a mailman, make sure you don't touch the mail, just like OP said, or you might go to jail. So, for those not in the know, a mystery shopper is a person assigned by the company to make random unannounced inspections with regards to customer service and in general the well-being of company employees and the store. Also, it's customary for the mystery shopper to blend in with everyday customers and not bring attention to themselves, in a way that can be misconstrued as just another obnoxious and rude customer. Well, this Karen did not get that memo. So one day around lunchtime, my boss was in the back having her lunch. I was out on the shop floor serving customers, an unusually high amount, but nothing I couldn't handle on my own. When in walks Karen. As I was serving the queue of customers, I half-heartedly say, "Hi, welcome to so-and-so," while still serving and ringing through the items. All of a sudden, I hear the Karen harumph, and under her breath, she says, "Well, it's polite to make eye contact." And that's when alarm bells start going off. The woman hums and haws while I'm making my way through the remaining customers. All the while, she's staring daggers at me, and eventually storms off in a huff, looking around. Like I'm supposed to just walk away from paying customers just to help her. As the last 2 customers make their way to the till, she joins the queue with a whole 2 items, with an audible, "Oh, for F's sakes." At which point, the customer I'm serving looks at me with the "what the F" expression, and I nod. Not even 1 minute in, Karen says, "This is effing ridiculous." Finalizing the payment before moving on to the next customer, the till decides to freeze, and it takes a few minutes for it to reboot. I make my apologies, and the customer I'm serving is fine with it, along with the customer behind. And Karen says louder, "Oh, for F's sakes." The service in this establishment is absolutely effing ridiculous. The Karen starts throwing F-bombs left and right. Now I had enough. With my best but pissed off customer service voice and smile, I say, "Listen, as you can clearly see, I'm dealing with other customers. I am the only staff member on the floor as my boss is at lunch. The till has decided to not play nice, and to be perfectly honest with you, I'm well within my rights to refuse you service and ask you to leave, as your attitude is absolutely horrendous." The Karen then says, "What? You can't talk to me that way. Don't you know who I am?" I tell her I really don't care, to be honest. Now I'm once again asking you to leave. She then storms off in the foulest mood you ever did see. The customer I'm serving says, "Thank Christ you said something. I was ready to smack her." We both laugh, and I finish both services and thank them for their patience. My boss finally finished her lunch at this point and has come through the front. My boss says, "Oh, so I meant to say that there's going to be a mystery shopper in at some point. I don't know who it is, but please be on your best behavior." Now hearing that, I'm thinking, oh my effing goodness. I quickly tell her what happened, and I explain that I was busy, but not too busy, that I needed to involve her. And lo and behold, just as I finished telling her, in walks the regional manager for the company. He says, "OP, back office, now." Now I'm thinking I'm dead. Now, knowing that the regional manager has the tendency to be a hothead in these situations, I was crapping bricks at this point. But thankfully, I've had a good working relationship with him up until this point, so it could really go any way. He then asked me, being unusually calm, what happened. So I explained everything, from the moment she entered to the moment she stormed off, almost taking the door with her, and the fact that I had witnesses that worked in the immediate vicinity, the full shebang. The manager then sighs and nods and says, "I'm finally glad that someone has the balls to stand up to my wife." Now I'm thinking, what? The look on my face said it all, and he starts to laugh and says, "Please accept my apologies, and I'll let your boss know that there's not to be any repercussions of this. And I think it's time to let my wife know that it's time to find more suitable employment." At this point, I'm speechless, and I start muttering, "Thanks?" He then hands me a 20-pound gift card for the mall's cafe and said that lunch was on him. That was the best coffee and chicken bacon club sandwich that I've ever had. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our slash entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's wild stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. A Karen decides to confiscate OP's walker because she thinks he's a fake cripple. Seriously, it's such a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.